Good evening, Dungeon Masters. I'm Baron Durop. What if I told you that just by knowing the geography of a fantasy map, you could know where nations would likely form, what long-standing political issues would be perennial, and how those issues are ripe for quest hooks? Today, we'll dissect some of the basics of geopolitics so you can quickly develop plots, stories, and even entire histories inspired by the landmasses in a fantasy world map. The most important aspect to understand when analyzing geopolitics is to understand that while geopolitics discusses how geography influences culture and society, this social science is really an exploration of how cultures gain access to energy. And there is no source of energy more important or influential to human development than a river. Rivers check a lot of boxes when it comes to being the bedrock of civilization. Firstly, a flowing water system provides drinking water for the people who live on its shores. Additionally, the river is home to game fish, which can be caught and consumed for their caloric and protein benefits. But even more importantly, the flowing energy of a river allows for technology like ditch irrigation or water mills to come into use. These technologies offer a distinct advantage to cultures who have that water flow energy access. The human labor saved by using a river's energy can be redistributed toward trade specialization like masonry, carpentry, or leatherworking. As river communities grow and coalesce and are specifically able to do so because of that trade specialization, the river system further becomes a highway of transportation between these river-based communities. Because it's far cheaper to float goods and services on water than it is to haul those same things over land, the river becomes a primary method of doing trade and exchanging cultural ideas. As a result, agricultural metropolitan identities almost always coalesce around a river system. It's these identities which lay the groundwork to become the true bedrock of civilization. A look back across time shows us examples like the Indus, Egyptian, Sumerian, or even Yellow River civilizations as some ancient examples, but today the United States of America is probably the poster child of this phenomenon. This nation exploits the entirety of the Mississippi River system as both the heart of its international trade, connecting Chicago and Green Bay with St. Louis, Memphis, and New Orleans, but also as a source of water for the most productive agricultural landmass on the planet. To iterate, this river-based social and commercial exchange usually causes a singular cultural identity to develop around that river. There are only a handful of places on the globe where this doesn't happen, usually due to the river's size or because of other influencing geography. For example, the Danube or the Nile both cut through immense mountain ranges where cultural divides are evident. What's more is that the river system is still likely the most important aspect of modern civilization, despite our modern era having access to fossil fuels, overland highways, and the internet. We still need fresh drinking water. River barges are extremely efficient at moving bulk goods, and rivers and their respective aquifers are the biggest determining factor for where agriculture can be done. So, what happens when a society grows and develops technology beyond basic agriculture? Trade specialization enables a population to experiment with other nearby natural resources to make tools and equipment. These invented tools or processes further kick that trade specialization into ever higher gear. In Stone Age society, for example, almost everyone had to focus their labor on agriculture to survive, but once bronze was invented, somewhere close to 5% of human labor was reallocated to the manufacturing of metal tools, as well as writing and legal developments to protect social interests like trade or welfare, things that were enabled by the existence of bronze tools. Various trade deals existed across Central Asia to support the proliferation of copper, tin, and bismuth, the required ingredients to make bronze. Therefore, civilizations which had access to rivers and were near mountain chains laden with these ores became economic superpowers. When the pressure from climate change caused famine, disease, and alien invaders in Central Asia, the entire trade system broke down, leading to the Bronze Age collapse. Society didn't start to rebuild to its former glory until a new style of metalworking using iron spread through the region. As a result, iron became the new hot commodity and re-enabled trade specialization. Fast forward to modern day, and more esoteric raw materials and their uses further accelerates trade specialization away from agriculture. Access to metal or metalloid ores like iron, copper, silicon, and lithium, especially if it's near a large waterway, continue to be a direct contributor to a population's economic success. This industrial development is further expanded if the region also has some reserves of fossil fuels, or more recently, clear skies and consistent wind patterns. For example, Chile exploded onto the geopolitical scene once the nation's shoreline was identified as one massive pile of petrified animal dung. This fossilized fertilizer was easily shipped to Europe and led to a boom in worldwide nutrition. Despite those ancient dung reserves being mostly depleted at this point, Chile still remains extremely important geopolitically due to the sheer bulk of metal ores mined from its sea-proximal cliff faces. Disrupting trade with Chile would likely lead to a worldwide shortage of copper and other heavy metals. So in our mundane, non-magical world, a population's access to river, metal ores, and fossil fuels are the biggest bedrocks of trade specialization. But what about a fantasy setting? These things will still likely hold true, but instead of desert nomads becoming temporarily rich off of petroleum, it will likely be wizards who build towers near ley line intersections, magic mushroom forests, or even mana crystal mines. Basically, whatever unique and rare resource that can be exhumed, processed, and used for energy production or trade specialization by a magical fantasy society is on the table for geopolitical importance. Imagine a river system near loamy soil that cuts through a mountain chain rich with iron ore. If it's discovered that one particular cliff edge near a town on that river is a magical hotspot, a powerful wizard would quickly build a tower there and do everything they can to control the politics of the nearby town for their own interests and security. If that river system also provides easy access to a large ocean, the aforementioned town will likely become an economic superpower. Their economic advantage is just too impactful for it to not look out for their own recurring interests worldwide. Now, with all of that discussed, we have to ask the question, where are the quest hooks? Remember, a nation, to serve its own interests and be self-sufficient, needs access to fresh water, important commodities like iron, timber, and Vespin gas, and geographical landforms which make defending those assets easy. These landforms include nearby oceans, deserts, swamps, or most importantly, mountains. In contrast, any civilization which borders another and doesn't develop strong trade relationships with those neighbors will almost always come into conflict. This is why Eastern Europe's Three Seas initiative is so alarming to Russian political interests. Currently, the most maintained roads in Eastern Europe only connect Eastern European industrial centers like Warsaw, Budapest, or Bucharest with Moscow. For the unfamiliar, the Three Seas initiative plans to develop highways, rail lines, and internet infrastructure that connects the nations between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas in a far more meaningful way. What might seem like just a road and highway project is actually a huge threat to Russian security interests. By physically tying all of these nations' economies together through trade, Eastern Europe will rapidly develop vested interests in each other's success and will more readily share cultural ideas across their borders. This kind of cultural exchange behavior, until the recent end of the Cold War, was only allowed to be done through Moscow. Where historically a Belarusian might have been negligent or even mistrusting of a Pole, this infrastructure plan will cause these cultural ideas, goods, and services to intermingle. That's exactly what Russia doesn't want, a strong and unified Eastern Europe. So when you study one of your own fantasy maps, ponder what resources are available near adjacent river systems. Do those resources create a trade complement, like timber in exchange for metal ore? If they do, it's likely that they will have a healthy trade relationship and remain at peace. A hot war would cause them to lose too much economically. If both civilizations are largely self-sufficient, however, these nations will likely antagonize each other. Each nation would always be looking for a way to one-up their foreign competition on the larger world stage and ensure their own security interests. Lastly, if one civilization is mostly self-sufficient while the other lacks key resources, the population lacking these resources will likely be a hotbed of exploitation, rebellion, populism, and radicalism against the larger and more oppressive state. So think about what kind of asymmetric issues could arise from fantasy resources too, like a druidic culture in a forest filled with magic-enhancing mushrooms. Those druids would likely fight tooth and nail to maintain their forest and see the construction of a wizard's tower not just as a threat to druidic authority, but a sin of exploitation of the planet's nature itself. Thanks for watching, Dungeon Masters, and until next time, good night.